A 2000 Honda CR-V, whopping 285,000 miles on it. And as with any high mileage vehicle, the question is, when is it too high? When is it time to get rid of it? Should I drive it till the wheels fall off? Okay, it's 20 years old now. Still doesn't look too bad here. Got an old door ding. Now the plastic on the door handle's broken, but you can still get in and out, so not necessarily something you got to do right away. See the interior? The cloth seats are still in pretty good shape. A lot of room in the back on these things. Now this one's in because it needs little maintenance. As you can see, the check engine light's on. It's running a little ragged, so I'm going to deal with that later. Now you can see the driver's window doesn't work anymore, but the passenger one does. And being a Honda, hey, the AC's still blowing cold. 20 years later and it's cold. Now the original crapper radiator's gone. Aftermarket one's been stuck in. But, you know, the windshield's got a big crack in it. And the spare tire's missing, but hey, the glass still works. They got plenty of room in the back to hold stuff. This one's got a spare rim for some reason. No tire, just a rim. Door locks, well, they don't work anymore either. And the antenna's seen better days. Plus the paint's starting to fade on the top here some. But it still goes down the road. Let's check under the hood. Double overhead cam, 4-cylinder engine. Ultra reliable. And the transmission, still the original transmission with all those hundreds of thousands of miles on it. It's a 4-speed automatic with overdrive. Back then, Honda actually made really good automatic transmissions. Later they had a few problems, but these, they're pretty bulletproof. And the engine puts out a respectable 146 horsepower for a small vehicle that's got plenty of zip. They can run with just minor maintenance, oil and fluid every 5,000 miles or so. Change the transmission fluid on a Honda, I say change it every 40,000 or so. There's just a little drain plug, a few quarts come out, you pump it back in. It's so easy to do. But being a Honda, always use the Honda automatic transmission fluid. Same thing with the power steering fluid. Only use the Honda power steering fluid. They all leak a little when they get older. This pump is leaking a little now, but fluid is cheap. And when you look around, you can see the cooling fans have been changed. They're made in Chinese aftermarket ones, but they work perfectly fine. They cost a lot less. That's one of the big advantages of these CR-Vs. They sell tons of Hondas. Engines used in a bunch of vehicles. A lot of interchangeable parts. There's a huge aftermarket out there, so you can get decent parts at a really good price and don't always have to go to the dealer to buy overpriced parts. Now, even though it's 20 years old, it's still got a reasonably stylish front end. It's front wheel drive with disc brakes on the front. Just ignore the dent, that's not the car's fault. And back here, hey, it's still got drums. But there's nothing wrong with drum brakes. Realize that over 90% of your braking is your front brakes. So the back brakes, they're just mainly to keep it to swaying side to side. And drums are perfectly fine. My Celica's got discs in the front and drums in the back. They don't have any problems. And the drums actually last a really long time. Now, if you do have an old car like this, you gotta decide, how long should I keep it? Well, in the case of this one, sure, it's got 280,000 miles, but the engine is still strong. The transmission's still strong, the AC still blows cold. Yeah, some of the windows don't work, the power locks don't work anymore. The vehicle still goes good. If, let's say, the engine starts to get a problem, rods are knocking, or the transmission starts really slipping and not working right, then you think, gee, do I really want to put thousands into this thing? And probably the answer would be no, you wouldn't. But this is a Honda. They probably make the best engines in the world for the money. And like I said, this particular automatic transmission, it didn't have any problems. I got a customer with one of these that's got 500,000 miles on it. The original engine and the original transmission. So they could definitely last a long time. Now, if you don't mind broken door handles, but they still get in and out, a few dings here and there, and a cracked windshield. These things actually do have an advantage in a vehicle. It's what everyone calls a beater car. You don't worry about a little ding here and there. It's already got the dings in it. The windshield's already cracked, so what if it gets another crack? It's stuff that, if you're willing to live with it as a beater car, maybe just a work car to commute in, nothing wrong with driving one of these until the wheels fall off. And speaking of wheels, let's close the hood, take it for a little spin. And yeah, typical, the ignition key's worn some. You gotta jiggle it a bunch. A lot of jiggling. There we go. Now, as we can see with the check engine light, there's a little problem, so it's not gonna run perfect, but it still goes. and it shifts fine. Give it a little gas, still got a little get up and go to it. And yeah, when you corner, you can feel a little bit of slop, and you gotta kind of counter steer a little so it goes straight. And then when you hit bumps, hey, it's a worn vehicle. You're gonna feel them clunking around a little, and you hear various road noises, but the whirring and stuff is normal. That's just older bearings. They're not worn out yet, and you know, you hit the bumps, you hear clangs and stuff, but hey, when these things are new, they're not the greatest riding vehicles anyways. You can hear the struts banging around when you hit bumps. Hey, yeah, it's worn, but it's not unsafe. You're not gonna be driving this thing 150 miles an hour. For normal in-town stuff, it's perfectly fine. But I did have a customer a few years ago, drove her CRV that was in much worse shape than this. The control arms were all worn out, suspension was going out. She drove it from Houston to New Mexico, and she was following a guy outside of San Antonio. She said, oh, they were doing over 100 miles an hour. He said, are you insane driving that thing 100 miles an hour with all those parts worn? And she just said, oh, it shook a little bit more, but it made it back and forth with no problems. And when you consider the amount of space that these things have, you pull the seats down, you got a lot of carrying room, and sure, the console's the old dated Honda one, and you know, it's all black, but I mean, look at the seats, 20 years old, and that fabric's still in excellent shape. Even the armrest isn't worn out yet. Let's face it, it's a solid beater little SUV. Very comparable to the RAV4. They each have their pluses and their minuses. These are a little zippier than the RAV4s. They handle a little better when they're new. The RAV4s have a little bit cushier ride than these things do, but they both can last a long time. And if you can get a used one cheap that still runs, they can be great beater cars. Check it out, this baby's 19 years old. The paint's still in excellent shape. Now, typical, the top's torn. You gotta replace the tops on any rag tops every so often. That's just how it is. But look, the chrome on the gas cap's still in good shape. This thing is in immaculate shape. Mazda Miatas are the best-selling sports two-seaters of all time. Way back in 2016, they sold their millionth one. How did they do it? Let's go back into history. People love British sports cars, but they were very unreliable. Many times people say, Scotty, why doesn't somebody put a Japanese engine in a British sports car? Well, Mazda went one better. They made the whole car. All made in Japan. Check this one out. What does it say? Made in Japan. No, they didn't do it by being super fast. These aren't serious race cars, although people do race them. They have racing circuits with Miatas where they all have the same engines and everything, so it's more skill of the driver than the car itself. They sold them because they're dependable fun. They're not that expensive either. When new, this thing was about $21,000, had 142 horsepower. It's a decent amount of horsepower for a little light car like this, if you go classic and have a standard transmission. You don't really want one of these automatic. They're dogs. The early ones, the automatic transmissions had a tendency of breaking when I got older. The standards, pretty dependable. You get a lot more zip, and really, they're a lot more fun to drive around with a standard. Check under the hood. Well, the stick's gone with this, so I'm gonna have to get my own stick. No big deal, I got sticks all over the place. Easy to work on, double overhead cam engine. This is metal. This isn't cheap plastic crap. Pretty well set up. Now, he did modify it because the old plastic radiator was cracking, so he put one of these Mishimoto's solid aluminum radiators. Smart move. Since they sold over 1 million of these things, there is an insane aftermarket for this. If you really want to go faster, there's a bolt-on supercharger kit. Now, it's not cheap, cost you over a couple grand, but you want to put some extra power in it, that's bolt-on power. Realize a supercharger can bump this from 140 to 270 horsepower. A lot of difference. Now, if you're serious about that, then you're going to have to do the engine internals on an old engine like this. It could get super expensive too, but it can be done, and there's many parts available for doing it if you want to go that far. But if you want to have fun as it stands now, it's fun with 142 horsepower because it's a classic rear-wheel drive Sportster. Engine's in the front. Transmission's in the middle, and the drivetrain is in the back. And they're all rag tops, so you got a convertible if you want. And if you pay extra, you can get the ones with the hard top shell for driving in the winter and places, and then you can put the shell in your garage when you're done and leave it as a convertible. And like I said earlier, realize you get any rag top convertible, the convertible top is a wearing out item. It will wear out. You want to keep them nice, you got to replace the tops. It's not that cheap, but that's the life of having a rag top convertible. And as I said, these things are ultra dependable. The AC on this thing still blows freezing cold. The engine's strong. The transmission's strong. And this is Texas, so, hey, no real rust. Got a few dings where people got mad and bashed it here and there. And we'll take it for a little ride. And we go inside. It's 19 years old. You can see seats have some wear and tear on them. They can always be done over. Put covers if you want. Well, start her up. Typical Japanese car starts right up. Fancy stereo system. You might as well. I mean, like I say, there's a big aftermarket for these things. This thing's got some mileage on it, 178,000 miles. And the check engine light's on, which I'm going to fix later. But as you see when it takes off, it's still got some zip to it. Make a nice little putt-putt sound, and they do handle really well. These things are made for cornering. They take nice tight corners. Now of course, it's a short wheelbase sports car. It doesn't ride all that great. No small sports car has that great of a ride. They're made for handling. They're not made for long distance trips, unless you like bouncing around a lot. But for 19 years old, this thing is still a lot of smiles per gallon driving it. And if you keep them pretty much stock like my customer has, they can be very dependable, very cheap maintenance cars. They can go quite some time, get good gas mileage, but still have some fun without shelling out a ton of money. I know a lot of guys say, oh, those are girly sports cars. Hey, it's not girly like an old Volkswagen Beetle that they don't make anymore that look like a push pram for pushing babies around in. Pretty much English sports car style design, except it starts and it doesn't break down all the time like the English ones did. And if you look at the prices of them, 2020, a brand new one starts at $26,000. This one was $21,000. That's 20 years ago. They haven't raised the price all that much, and it's got 181 horsepower, a little bit more than this one has. It's still affordable. And to me, I have a lot more fun when I pay less money for something than if I paid more. And you can see the quality. I mean, and the paint on this thing still is in excellent shape. They build them correctly in Japan. And yeah, the rag top's a little bit worn, but check out this. Mazda had class. Glass window in the back. I hate those rag tops with those cheap plastic ones that crack and look like junk. You want a glass window. It's gonna hold up so much longer, look so much better. And sure, it's an economy sports car, but you know, it's got some class, and it's got your big tach, speedometer, oil pressure gauge. It's a nice car for what it is. It's fun to drive. Like I say, it's a two-seater. Nobody can fit in the back of this baby, but that's what it's made for. And none of this BS electronics with the convertible top. You just unsnap the thing. Look at that. Don't worry about all the electronic crap breaking. I had a customer with the Mercedes. His metal convertible top broke. It cost them thousands to fix that stupid thing. Look at this flip. We're talking nothing to get it off and put it back on. Look, I want to pull it back up. I reach back, pull it on, snap it in place. That's it. Why on earth would you need more technology than that for a little two-seater convertible top? Brilliant design, still works 19 years later with no money spent on $1,000-something for motors and electronic controls that most modern convertibles have. Now, I do have to say I'm more a motorcycle guy than a little sports car guy, but if I was a little sports car guy, I certainly would buy one of these things to toy around in. They're too much fun for such a low price used. So now you know the truth about Mazda Miata sports cars and why they may be the absolute best sports car used car you can buy. Toyota Sequoias. This is an 07 Toyota Sequoia. Got the big V8 engine. Now it's only rear wheel drive. There's no front wheel drive on it. You don't need that with all this weight. Got plenty of traction. And as you can see inside, a lot of room in the front. Yeah, the leather seat's worn and torn a little. It's gonna happen when I get to be this old. And we open the back door, and what do we find? The baby seat. There's plenty of room. Got the nice leather seats, and then more seating. And we're not talking about tiny. Look, there's leg room here. This thing has a lot of space. As we open the back, we'll get an even better view. We got a nice cargo space here. Then we got the third row seats. Now, of course, If you take the third row seats out, then you got even more room. And if you move those forward, you got even more room. Kind of like a truck, really. Got the original Toyota hitch on it for towing. And as we can see on the top, got a big old luggage rack. Now, when it was new, this baby was about $36,000. Now, my customer recently purchased it. He's going to export it to Africa. He paid about $5 grand for it. Pretty good price for a solid vehicle like this. But when we go inside, we'll check the mileage. It does have 184,000 miles on it. Now, I have seen them with 500,000 miles on them, so they can last a long time. We'll see how this baby starts up. Turn the key. Starts right up. Now, back in the day, it didn't come with much, so somebody stuck a Pioneer stereo in it, but it still got freezing cold air conditioning in it. Nice cool air. Big old sunroof. And check this out. It's even got an entertainment system on it. This was a top of the line vehicle when it was new. And being a Toyota, everything pretty much still works. It's older, so it's still got a pretty much utilitarian steering wheel. It's just got the cruise control, nothing else. And just the plain old interior. But I mean, look at the space. Look at the design. This baby has a lot of space, and look at the leg room. And as we check here, look at this. It's got rear AC and heat controls too. This is a luxurious SUV. But it is 13 years old, so let's look at the data, okay? We got no trouble codes here, so let's look at the raw data, where they can't hide anything from you, at least for me. Here we go, live data. This is where the rubber meets the road. I can see what shape this vehicle actually is. I'm scrolling through, and so far everything looks pretty good, but we're gonna get pretty deep here. Short-term fuel trim. Each bank is pretty close to each other. They're just a little bit off. Something with this much mileage that's only subtracting a tiny amount of fuel like that and pretty much evenly to both cylinders is in excellent shape. From my experience with these, if somebody wanted to perform a full fuel injector cleaning service where I put my pressurized machine on, it would probably make the short-term fuel stop having to subtract stuff, because it would be spraying less fuel then. They all drip a little bit as they get a little bit aged. Now we look at the target air fuel ratio, 0.996. Now 1.0 is perfect, so it's pretty close to perfect for an old vehicle like this. And check out the variable valve timing. If you remember the Genesis I did a short time ago, they both were supposed to be 0, 0, and then when you look at what they were way off. It's still 0. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's perfect. As I showed on that Genesis at idle, the degrees were changing. They should remain at 0 when it's idling. This thing actually has more mileage than the Genesis had on it, by about 80,000 miles, yet it's still 0, perfect at idle. Shows that Toyota is making a much better engine than the Genesis has in it. We checked the misfire counts for them all 8 cylinders, they're all 0. That's perfect. So for such an old vehicle, it's in immaculate shape. Now let's check under the hood. And what do we have under here? Big old 4.7 liter V8 engine. But do realize this is a big, heavy vehicle. 13 miles a gallon in the city and about 15 miles a gallon on a highway. They are gas guzzlers. There's no ifs and buts about these things. Most of my customers that own them, they never check their gas mileage. I ask them, well, what kind of gas mileage are you going to say? It's got to be so bad, we don't even want to know. We just fill it up with gas all the time. But with the coming recession and oil prices going down, hey, gasoline is going to be cheaper for quite some time, it looks like. Now, being a Toyota, hey, they don't break down that often, but one big disadvantage of this V8 engine is they hide the starter way under there. You got to take the intake manifold, the top of the engine off to replace the starter. Bad design for sure, but I got my bore scope out and looked at this. It still has the original starter on it. At some point in time, that'll have to be changed, and it's an expense because of that design. But it's not a reason not to buy a vehicle. The anti-lock braking system still works perfectly. Heck, it's still got the original radiator and it's not leaking. And look, here's something you won't even see today. The headlights are still clear. And the new ones, oh, they fade pretty fast. They even used to make the headlights better. These are plastic ones. The newer ones are cheaper. And as you can see under the front, coolers galore. Special coolers here. Got a coolant fan for the AC condenser. Got a big old fan for the engine. Huge. I got friends that live in deserts. They love these things. They don't overheat. They are made to take high temperatures and throw that heat out. Even the wheels are holding up. I mean, they ain't clean and they're dirty, but hey, front and back, they're still solid. A few hits on a curb, but you can polish that off if you want. Let's close the hood and take it for a spin. Solid hood too. Corner's pretty smooth. Yeah, it's a big truck, but step on the gas, see what happens. Now it has a big V8 engine, but it is heavy. It takes off, but you know, it's not a race car. You can go fast, but it's awful top heavy. I would not advise racing around in these things like a maniac on curves. Ride's good. Let's hit these big bumps in the road. See, I mean, it handles them pretty well. It is a truck after all. I mean, it's not going to ride like a Lexus, but it handles the bumps quite well, even with all this mileage on it. And look at this, 184,000 miles, still idles, no shaking. This is a quality giant SUV. There's no arguing that. So now you know the truth about Toyota Sequoias, and if you're looking for a big 3-row seating SUV, hey, it might be what you're looking for. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.